Well, when I entered the workforce, I was making 50 cents above minimum wage. I was making $6.50 an hour, and then just depending, like serving jobs was a typical 213 plus tips, um, and then if most other jobs that weren't serving, you were expected to make tips on those jobs, it was still reduced under the minimum wage income.
As a server, it's pretty shitty. It's a ripoff. It's $2.13. So basically, it just goes to taxes. You can't use it. That money, you really just sits there. It's just so you're on the roll or the payroll. Your whole money is dependent on tips. If you ever rely on your $2.13 an hour, you probably get sadly awakened at different results. Because I don't think I've ever seen someone get a check. Like most of my checks from waitering was $0. So yeah, that $2.13 is amazing. It's nothing.
Wow.
I mean, he pays taxes.
My highest paying job, salary wise, was probably when I was a manager, and that was around $11 an hour. That's kind of sad because I had people under me who were making more money than I was, and I had much more more responsibilities. But the lowest paying job I had was being a server. You had like a $2 an hour wage that you earned, and then whatever tips you had on top of that, and you couldn't really consistently know what you were going to make on a given night. Well, I was a younger manager at the time. I was 18 or 19, and people under me were older, had more experience, but I was given a higher position. I'm not really sure how it was they could pay someone who was under me more money, but you needed a job, you got what you took what you got. Absolutely not. There's no way you could support yourself off $11 an hour for something that you should be making probably upwards of 20 or more. Especially in a management position, and same thing with being a server. There's no way you can really realistically live off of an unknown amount of money you get in a given night.
As a server, probably I would have to make sure I had to do a lot of doubles. You can definitely support yourself, but that's easily 10 hours every day doing a double.
How many days a week?
So if you do double, they'll limit you. You can't go over 40 hours a lot of times. For a lot of companies like Chili's, they will not get you overpaid. Mm-hmm. So once you get 39, they cut you off. So it doesn't really matter. There's some ways to squeeze in, like they don't count an hour at the end of the night as your shift, even though you still get paid.
So if you were to work the regular 40-hour work week, could you support yourself as a server?
Barely.
No. I mean, they would always promise us a raise, but it just never happened. So.
Starting out when I was in the grocery industry was it went pretty quick. I started out about $9 an hour, moved pretty quick up to 10. I was a couple months in. The $10 an hour range from there on was a lot more difficult. I moved up to being a cashier. From cashier, went to cashier trainer, customer service employee. I went to an assistant manager. All of that being within $10 an hour, and there were a set customer service wage of about $12 an hour. And then when I moved up to being a manager for a little while, I was given a $1 raise to about 11, and that's pretty much where it capped off from there. But like I said, there were other people who were doing less of a job and got paid more.
I was at a couple positions for two different reasons that I can think of off the top of my head. The first one is I'd been there for like a year and a half, and the whole time working there, doing my job, kind of making the numbers, making us look good. Finally, the management was like, "Oh, well, if we want to hang on to this guy, we have to give him something to keep him around." And so I was given like a it was when I was working as a valet. I was given about a 50-cent raise after a year and a half, which is pretty bad for most standards. Then the second time was because I was working the same job as the shift managers were, because it was such a reduced, it was such a low volume place that only one associate had to be on the floor at a time. And so, after a while, I said, hey, I'm doing the exact same job for the exact same work. Either give me the same pay as the shift manager, or else I'm going to go somewhere else, because it's not fair that I'm doing the exact same job.
Service industry is not really raises. The only raise you get is from server to manager. That's the only real jump you can do. You can do a cook. Cooks make good money in restaurants, unless you don't like working with food. But as a server, you're paid $2.13 an hour, no matter what, all the time.
$2.13.
Yeah,
Wow,
that's a lot of money.
So if you don't get tipped, you're kind of
Screwed. Yeah. Usually, if you don't get tipped, you kind of have to pay that money. So that's the concept.
You have to pay that money.
Yeah, so if you make $2.13, usually it goes to taxes. So if you don't make any tips for 1 hour, you're just paid $2.13, technically.
So basically, you're making no money.
Mm-hmm. That's why all the money is all tips. $2.13, that's nothing. You never see that until you get your taxes back.
Like the worst night I probably ever had, I walked out of there with probably about $10 in your pocket on a slow night when you didn't have a lot of people and people just don't tip.
That's fair. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, I had multiple tables in a row that didn't leave you a tip just because they didn't leave you a tip.
One day I did a double and I made like $80, and it was a Friday. And I was 18, 19. It was at my first waiting job, Mesa Rosa. And I don't really remember the specifics, but I remember being really upset with myself because not only did everyone do pretty poor, but we were busy, and yet no one really did well. And I really kind of got down on myself because working a double on a Friday, if you don't make $100, you're doing something wrong. So yeah, I was pretty hard on myself that day.
The worst haul I ever had as a server definitely would have been for Mother's Day. Mother's Day is notorious for everyone who doesn't normally get to go out to eat for one reason or another, or is just an unhappy human being. Everyone has a mother, and they all realize, like, hey, I have to be nice to my mom because she was always there for me. And so, depending on whatever the income of the guests were, or just however happy they were, everyone would come out on Mother's Day. But at the same time, everyone was coming on Mother's Day, so it was crowded, long lines, hour and a half, 2-hour waits. And so after 2 hours of people that are hungry, not getting food, everyone's kind of a little angry about being hustled around and waiting and kind of stagnant. So once they do get their food and they have to wait for their food because it is so crowded that the kitchen can only move so fast, that they're very unhappy that it took them 4 hours to go out and get something to eat. And so after 4 hours of that, very, very few people appreciate or kind of consider what the server's doing, because they're doing the exact same thing. They're just nonstop. And as a server, you get taxed on what your sales are. And so with your sub-minimum wage, $2.13 an hour plus your tips, and then your sales, when you make, $0 to $5 on a table, because you either get stiffed or get left a crinkled up old, $5 bill, you're actually losing money. It's like it would be cheaper if you just didn't even work that day, because, I remember the worst time was, it was actually the last Mother's Day I worked. I made $40 for working, it was like 9 hours, just nonstop running around, and I was like, I literally could have, saved gas money and breakfast and lunch.
The worst pay-related experience would probably be when I was a manager, just because I knew that there were people under me who were getting paid more money and had less responsibilities, and I was working, countless hours trying to improve things, while people who were coming in for a 4 or 5 hour shift had more money, then they would pretty much walk out of the building with more money than I did, and I was in charge of them or their boss. So
There was one time I was working at Chili's. They do double partners, and so you have 2 waiters for a whole row, which is like I think 8 tables or 6, depends on the restaurant, I guess. We were slam packed, and me and this one guy had a really good pour, and we worked really good together. We made, I don't know, well, we thought we made like $300 for both of us. And
tips?
yeah, it was just for 4 or 5 hours. It was really well. Well, it turned out there was a computer error, and we were at the bar drinking in celebration, and our boss called us to let us know that he messed up, saying that we both owe him $50 or something for technical errors or something. I don't know. I don't really remember that too much, but I just remember being drunk at the bar and realizing I owe some money, and I'm spending some of that money at the same time. So
Probably one of the worst pay related experiences was looking for it was one of my jobs that I had like my freshman year of college, and so I had to have a job. I was short on money, but to work at that job we were required to wear that store's brand clothing, and so it wasn't only just like a shirt. It was shirt, shorts, and shoes as well, because it was a footwear store. And so I literally had to dish out almost $200 just so I could work at the place before I even got my first paycheck.